And yes, we are live. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is Bahamia, their geriatric care manager, nurse in the know, and we have Miss Robin Downs from Yoga Flava and Sergeant Major William Downs. Thank you two for coming in today. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having us. How are you doing, Bahamia?
I'm wonderful. I'm just getting some new equipment and I'm trying things out here. So I guess, what do they call it? Treading lightly, but it's going really well. So things are good. We were just catching up for all of you guys who were kind of tuning in for the first time. Robin and I have been working together for a while around elder care, caring for loved ones with dementia. And I have been really just enamored by Sergeant Major and Robin and how they work together within the dementia care, memory loss kind of community. And Robin, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I just wanted you to kind of get an idea, or the viewers to get an idea of what we do here on Embracing Caregivers, Embracing Elder Care.
Thank you, Bahamia. And the short description of who I am is I'm Robin Downs, the daughter of Sergeant Major William Huntley Downs, U.S. Army retired, and also retired school teacher. And for the past 3 years, I have taken on the primary caregiver role. Sergeant Major did prepare very well for this time of his life. He does have access to an aide that comes and helps out as well. But there's all kind of things that need to be navigated, you know, in addition to the insurance that he was able to put in place. So I think for other caregivers who are stepping into the role, not everything is as straightforward as their loved one might have thought it was when they set things up. Sure. So that's where when I saw Bahamia was reaching out to caregivers, I really embraced that with her background in geriatric care management to figure out how we could be supportive of each other and then take that energy and create a community that we can support.
Yes, absolutely. So as part of our structure here on our Sunday broadcast, we like to start off with Robin doing either a meditation, an affirmation, or some kind of, what would you say, balancing or centering practice. So Robin, I would
say some kind of yoga flavor.
There we go. There we go. We've got to get some yoga flavor in up front. That's absolutely right. Yes.
So for those who don't know, my brand is Yoga Flava. And I say not just yoga, also the flavor of life. I'm coming up on the 25th year anniversary, and I've gone through different focuses, different stages. I started out with guided relaxation, guided meditation, and I've worked with youth. And right now, I'm really dedicated to elder care and keeping those who want to keep it sexy with silver hair. So,
right.
But all stages, all phases of life, and making it fun. Yes. So what I'd like to do today is I always like to just kind of get into a more relaxed state. We jumped on, we introduced ourselves, people may be gathering in, this may be a rebroadcast, but for everybody, let's just take a moment. And I like to take a moment to connect with the breath, first of all, and inhaling through the nose and bringing the breath deep into the lower belly, because a lot of us kind of create a lot of tension in the upper part of our breathing cavity. So just inhale and really feel your belly swell like a balloon. And then exhale, really pull the belly button back towards your spine and up towards your heart. So continue to breathe deeply and exhale fully. If your shoulders are going up and down, that means you're breathing using the upper part of your breathing cavity. So see if you can actually drop your shoulders. Yeah. Bring the breath deep into your lower belly. Let it swell, like push my hand away, Dad. Inhale. And then exhale, pull the belly back. Okay, going again. Inhale, push my hand away. And then exhale, pull the belly button back towards your spine. One more time. Inhale, full belly breath. And then exhale, squeezing the belly button back towards the spine. Let's do it again. One more time. Inhale, full belly breath. There you go. Exhale. Squeeze the belly. Yes, yes, yes. So a lot of us are unconsciously breathing and not getting the full breath of the breathing cavity. Next, I'd like you to just drop your jaw and really move your jaw from side to side and all around. So this too is also letting go of any unconscious gripping, holding, tension that you might be keeping in the jaw, side to side. And then exaggerate chewing like maybe a cow chews, like big chew. So yeah, feel that stretching the jaw. It's also good for your facial muscles.
I can imagine someone coming in right now.
Yep, releasing the tension in the face, and then raise your eyebrows up and down, up towards your scalp, up and down, letting go of any unconscious gripping, holding, tension, keeping in the face. Good. And then once again, that big inhalation, full belly breath. And exhale fully. So the affirmation I chose for today is I am resilient. As we get into the topic of, you said transitioning, right? Transitioning, yeah, changes, going through changes, whatever the changes, and the changes that a caregiver goes through and the changes that a loved one goes through, keeping the mindset that I am resilient. Whatever you're going through, you will get through it and you will shine. I am resilient.
I love that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Robin. I think that always relaxes me. It's almost like, you know, that right before I get on this live, I'm just like, okay, is everything got it? Okay. And then it's one big, okay, now that we can breathe. That's really nice. And I know it's nice for our caregivers too, because I think sometimes that's why I identify so well with caregivers, is that they tend to always be on the go, right? There's always like something that needs to be done. There's a task off the to-do list. There's always something that hasn't quite gotten finished. And so there we go, Sergeant Major. I was just going to say, can I peek over where we are? We've got your wonderful, handsome face. Thank you. But yes, I just wanted to just expound on the fact that having that 5 minutes of just relaxation every day, if possible. I really encourage every day.
We all hold a lot of unconscious tension, and that's where I appreciate yoga, because it brings it into our consciousness of the fact that when we do release it, like, ooh, I didn't even realize I was holding it. So just consciously letting go.
Yes. So I guess that brings us now into our subject topic of the day. We are talking about transition. Well, we're continuing the care plan because we wanted to basically give our viewers an opportunity to create their own perfect care plan, something that will give them a solid foundation for how they're going to continue their caregiver journey, and then also kind of give us an opportunity to talk about certain things that have worked for us or things that I've seen work for my client caregivers and things that don't work for them. So today's section we're going to be talking about is transitioning from the adult that's independent, your aging loved one who's independent, either at home or maybe in an assisted living setting, because sometimes, you know, the assisted living setting allows them to be independent, but sometimes they need a little bit of supervision or just some help that otherwise wouldn't be possible at the home. So we're talking about going from an independent state of being to a caregiver situation where you, the caregiver, are their support system 24 hours a day, maybe 16 hours a day, depending on how things are. Or maybe they're actually transitioning into a long-term care setting of, and we'll talk a little bit about why you chose differently, Robin, in being like a nursing home. And I think you're probably really happy that you made that decision given our current state of being. So first things first, when it comes to transition, is having good expectations or thinking things that are going to work out positively, being that you're not sure what's going to happen. I think one of the biggest things that my caregivers experience is fear, uncertainty, and just overwhelmment of the actual process. So Robin, can you talk a little bit about how we've discussed this a little bit in certain broadcasts, but this is kind of where I really wanted to get into the meat of what that transition really looked and felt like for you. And I'll offer some tips because your experience is much like every caregiver that I've really ever worked with. So I'll let you take it away. Just tell our folks what it
Sure.
was.
And I'd like to just also reinforce the affirmation, I am resilient, because when you find yourself in the midst of change and uncertainty and you're diving in and you want, you have all these expectations, it's best to just, be open to whatever is going to happen and just confirm within yourself that you are resilient to make it through whatever's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to me was a lot of surprises. And, I think for my father too, because my father, even just before we got on the broadcast, Dad, you were just saying, I used to be able to do so much, and when it came time for support and help, I believe my father was still in the mindset of, I can still do so much. I can still, because I always have done so much. So I still should be able to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that I see him accepting now, because has become so grateful, where, every time you say grace, Dad, and you're so much like, thank you for being with me. Right. And thank you for all you do. So it took a while for that dynamic to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning, I think he really had to understand that he did need the help. And that was difficult for my father, Sergeant Major, who has been, extraordinarily independent and outgoing and resourceful, man that you are, to really accept that perhaps my daughter may be able to help me.
Sure.
So, the nitty gritty was that I was working a job in Manhattan at a production company that made advertisements. I was the office manager, production coordinator. I had a lot of responsibilities in terms of getting all the production elements together. And I started getting more and more phone calls that my father needed help and that decisions needed to be made. And I really was distracted from the job at hand, and I wasn't able to balance the two. And my employer let me go. Now, on the one hand, it was a blow to my ego.
Sure.
On the other hand, I was able to collect unemployment and focus on taking care of my father. So when I had the time to focus, I realized that there was a tremendous amount of things that needed to be put in place. Even though my father had put a lot of things in place, a lot of those things that were put in place needed to be implemented.
Yes. And updated, right?
And updated. Mm-hmm. Claims needed to be filed.
Sure.
Legal documents needed to be signed and organized. Because I would always remember when I would ask my father about the legal documents, he was like, oh, yes, the UFT has a great legal department. But that's as far as it went.
Right.
So it got to the point where my sister kind of forced our hand to like, hey, you really need to get that legal paperwork in order. It was annoying to my dad, but he went and got the documentation in order. And that took a while too, to be clear about, what exactly he wanted in the documentation. Mm-hmm. So that took some time. And throughout that, I needed to be patient with his processing of that. And but we got through it.
Right? You did.
Because we're resilient.
Yes, right? Exactly. And it's a big deal because I think, and we'll talk more about the documentation piece. I think we could do a whole episode, a session on documentation because.
Well, I told you that's a big thing, and it still is, because Dad's documentation is in place, and I want to get mine in place.
Yes.
And that's where I told you when we do our programs, the documentation, I want to be able you to hold my hand, and we're going to hold everybody else's hand
and walk through it. Absolutely. And the program that Robin is talking about, just in case, we haven't talked to our viewers about it, but we're putting together a masterclass that we would like to really offer our viewers and caregivers an opportunity to really come in and deep dive into the care plan and looking at caregiving and ways that we can really allow this part of our journey, this caregiving season, an opportunity for us. Well, we can allow it to strengthen us and not necessarily be that season in our life that was traumatic or was one of the most challenging things that you've ever experienced. Because no doubt it will be in certain aspects, but I think the reason Robin and I have come together so strongly on this is that a lot of caregivers end up going through what is unnecessarily traumatic when it comes to this space, right? And it's emotionally charged enough, and to have to add certain frustrations, complications, distractions, and things is where the trauma comes from. So part of our mission is to put together a masterclass that we will offer our caregivers in a way to help them look at this in a different way, and even provide some healing around some of the things, the decisions, the situations that they've found themselves in that they're not especially happy to be in, or they're not especially proud of.
The dynamics.
The dynamics, yes. We'll get into that. But yes, thank you, Robin, for sharing the whole transition in general and how kind of, where it brought you as you came from working, doing your own independent thing, dad doing his own independent thing. And now you're at a space where it's like, okay, I have to make real decisions, making those solid decisions, and just trusting yourself to make the decisions. Because I think Sergeant Major, we talked about this a little while ago, he wasn't as open to having you there initially. And then when things really started to settle in and, things around his care started to be impacted, he was more open-minded, right? He had a little bit more of a welcoming heart, but like you said, it took time. And I think that's a big deal.
I really appreciate it, Dad, when at every grace that you thank me for all that I do and for being with you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think the time piece is a big piece too, because I think depending on where you're at in your journey, you may feel like things are just never going to change, right? Or that it's just going to get worse. And I guess we came here to tell you that it's not necessarily going to get worse. It's just going to take some time. These processes really take a while to build up. So I just wanted to offer just a couple strategies that I have for our caregivers as they're making their transition or their loved one is making their transition. Depending on where your loved one's health has been, dementia specifically is really tough because it kind of creeps in. And so I always say, if there are other chronic issues, like, high blood pressure, if your loved one has had a history of strokes, or if they've had issues with mobility, it's reasonable to expect that they will have to have some kind of transition of care to something that's more supervised. So I say, have the conversation and start looking around you. If you're not open to having your loved one at home, or you're not able to, look around you at what your options might be. You don't necessarily have to hire a geriatric care manager like myself, but you do need to start to look at the resources that are available through, if not your physician, but also your elder care association or elder association in your local town, city, wherever you are. The second tip I wanted to offer is, when you're thinking about a transition, if you are going to have your loved one at home, think about how you can start to make your home adaptable to their needs. So, Robin, I know one of the things that you went through when you were transitioning Sergeant Major back to his home was clearing it out, right? You had an issue around him having a lot of things and not having space for them. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, a lot of things. Once again, he lived with his lady friend.
Yes.
In the Bronx.
Yes.
Right. And then when he would go camping or whatever, he would stop by, get the mail, drop off things, and then just go back and be with his lady friend. So yes, this house did become kind of a storage haven. And then when it was time to come back, it wasn't just a place for storage. It was now making the house and turning it back into a home.
Yes.
And so going through all of the worldly possessions, and which includes a lot of my stuff too. My primary things that I love that are in this house are the pictures. And that's where I always go back to saying that my father's an award-winning photographer. They called him the flashbulb kid. So I love the fact that there are pictures. And I think that's also a big part of caregiving, organizing the pictures. And using that to remind them of their fabulous life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a family member, if you could label the pictures to remind them, and just for everybody, labeling their pictures, because when you do reach that stage where you can't quite remember anymore, it's such a treasure to have those pictures. So we'll start with the treasures. And that's the thing too, Bahamia. There's so many little treasures amongst the mounds of things. And as a family member, I saw and knew that there were treasures. Anybody else coming in wanted to just like toss everything.
Right, absolutely.
So I really had to calm the troops, the neighbors or the aides that came in and were ready to do.
They were ready to go, right?
Everything. Yeah. And, little things like, pulling out his yearbook and like, oh, Colin Powell signed his yearbook, little treasures, were found around the house. So I'm really big on finding the treasures. And once again, it is daunting for anyone that will walk into anybody's house that has accumulated things over the year and may not see the treasures in the mountains of stuff. So I always, as you see, Bahami, I keep going back to find the joy, find the treasures. Yes, it can be overwhelming, but we are resilient.
We are. And we have to get it done, right? There's a lot of that, especially when the whole moving. In his case, you were kind of moving back in where you were getting things kind of, but a lot of the times it's the other way around where we're moving our loved one out. And we're either having to liquidate, either selling a home or doing something to the effect of taking all those treasures and finding a new home for them. So it's another level, right? But you're right, we are resilient. And there are different ways that we can plan around that, different, resources that I don't think a lot of people know are available. And we'll discuss that in another broadcast, because I do want to talk about the move. The move can be very, very big and very stressful. And maybe even a little traumatic, depending on what's going on. So yes, we'll talk about the move at a later date. But the point being that with this whole process, finding the joy of even just going through, like you said, some of your older things, your artifacts, your keepsakes, your mementos, that's where you really start to piece together the story. And that's where I kind of help.
What I'm thinking about it, here's one more thing that happened. Dad had a china cabinet that had the fine china, right? Let's just say that we never touched, never used, whatever. And I took the china out the china cabinet and put the mementos that I thought were more meaningful versus looking at the china. I put his award certificates that were like in drawers and stuff. I was like, oh, look at this. I put the medals that I found tucked away there. I'm like, I don't want to see the china. I want to see your award. I want to see your certificate. I want to see that picture of you in your sailboat. Right, Daddy? You got it right up there. And all his medals and all his awards being a teacher and citations that he got that were like in file cabinets. I'm like, let's put the china in a cabinet that, we don't have to look at every day. Let's look at all of your accomplishments. And I know that really helped. So as we were going through, I pulled out the treasures and showcased them.
Yes. Sergeant Major, did you like that adjustment that she made where she put all your things in the china cabinet?
Yes.
Yes, there we go. And I think it's important. That's a really good point, Robin. Looking at having that right there in front of you, right?
Just go to dinner, it's in the dining room, and where he's able to look at that and see pictures of the family and his awards. Yeah,
very big deal. Very big deal. And that kind of brings me to my last point in terms of just the actual moving. So we got the logistics part out. That's going to always be frustrating, but there are different ways around that. I think that's almost the easier part when it comes to finding the people, that can be challenging. But once those things are set, they're set. I think what tends to be the more challenging part is the emotional response and triggers that come with the whole process of having to leave somewhere that you've known for, in some cases, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And go to a child's house, or sometimes a residential care facility for the elderly, or sometimes long-term care. You have this emotional charge in it because it's something that's so different.
And I'll talk on that too, because my father, to this very day, with Dad's situation, it was Shirley's son, Albie. You want to tell the story where he didn't want you to marry his mother?
You can do it for me.
Okay. Well, the story is that, my father's lady friend had a son, Albie, and my father would always say how he really feels that the son was the one to break them up, because he didn't want them to get married, because then the son would be cut out from, decision makings and all kind of things.
And finances.
And talk about it, finances. When Dad wants to speak up, he'll speak up, right?
He will.
So Albie pretty much, made the separation happen, told him he couldn't go back to his mother's house. And my father, to this day, really feels slighted by the way that happened. And he still feels like he's missing things. And so he was a bit, traumatized. I don't know if that's the word, or to this day.
That's the word.
He still feels some kind of way with the way that all went down, and he still feels a certain loss in the way it went down. He'll be like, "What happened to my shirts with my cufflinks?" He never. I see. She never gave it back to me, and I had so many things, and
the cufflinks,
and that guy must have taken them.
Sure.
So that was our traumatic in terms of him moving, and he didn't plan the move. He was pretty moved. So that was the things that, yeah.
Unfortunately. And that happens a lot too, right? It's not just unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it happens so quickly and so abruptly that before you're even able to kind of know what's going on, or say anything, it's already done. It's done. So that can happen in many settings, actually. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened to you like that, Sergeant Major. But I think everything does always work out, right? Everything always works for the best. And the point is, we all want to make sure that you're well taken care of and that you're able to be as independent as you possibly can. So thank you, Robin, for sharing that, because I think some people miss the fact that emotionality doesn't just happen to you as the caregiver, but also your loved one who's going through it as well.
And it sticks with him. Like, he mentions it all the time. What happened to my things? And da-da-da-da. So he laments about it.
It's a big deal. So I think we're kind of coming close to our time. I just wanted to thank you guys. We didn't get enough time to talk about the finances. I don't want to squeeze it in last minute. I think, like you said, Robin, it probably finances and documentation probably deserves its own our broadcast. So I think maybe next week that's something that we can address, right, with our care plan. We'll continue down the road of how I develop a care plan for my caregivers and their loved ones, because I tend to always stress having a care plan for both caregivers and the loved one. And a lot of people kind of think the care plan is for their loved one and that's all that needs to be talked about, but that's not it. So yes, we will talk more next week about the finances, the documentation around caring for your loved one at home, aging in place, or even if it is in a long-term care setting, because I want to make sure that everybody understands and gets an opportunity to see what it's like as the caregiver who is up close and personal right there at the bedside. And then I still consider you a caregiver, even if you're not. I consider you a caregiver because if you're the person that gets called or has to rush to wherever when something happens, you are the responsible party. So with that being said, I will close out for today. Is there anything that you wanted to mention, Sergeant Major or Robin, before we sign off for the day?
Anything you want to tell the people, Dad?
Not this time.
Thank you so much, Bahamia, for once again having us, this is us together now, right?
It is. No, this is us together. We are having each other at this point.
Caregivers embracing elder care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. This is always awesome. I thank you guys for coming and just always being so bright and light and just giving our viewers the opportunity to see your journey firsthand. I think that's something that most people don't really get the opportunity to observe. And I just want to thank you. I can't thank you enough, honestly, for giving everybody the window into your life and sharing with us your journey. So we want to take this journey even further as far as we can go.
I'd invite you all to share your stories.
You are more than
questions, and how can we be of service to you all?
You are more than encouraged to ask us questions in the group or even in the chat whenever you guys come in. We'll post this on both of our respective social media profile pages, but we always love to have people come in and share their stories and ask their questions at any time. So until next week, next Sunday, we will see you guys. We hope that you have a wonderful week. And remember to take care of yourself.
And your loved one.
And your loved one. There we go. All right. Bye, Robin, everyone. Have a wonderful day, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.